Welcome to Global Trends. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. In 2025, President Trump reignited a global trade war by imposing sweeping tariffs on imports, sending shockwaves through the world economy. The announcement came suddenly, catching many by surprise and immediately sparking concern among international businesses and governments. This new wave of tariffs targeted even America's closest allies, including Canada, Japan, and the European Union, straining relationships that had been carefully built over decades. These tariffs, ranging from 10% to a staggering 50%, have upended international trade. Businesses that rely on imported goods are now facing skyrocketing costs, and consumers are feeling the pinch as prices rise on everyday items, from electronics to groceries. Shelves in some stores sit empty, while others are stocked with goods that few can now afford. The administration claims the goal is to protect American jobs and industries, arguing that these measures will strengthen the nation's manufacturing base. But the immediate result has been economic turmoil, confusion in global markets, and alliances pushed to the breaking point. Diplomats and business leaders alike are scrambling to respond. Countries now face tough choices: absorb the higher costs and risk domestic backlash, retaliate with their own tariffs, or seek new trading partners and markets. Protests have erupted in several capitals, and trade negotiations have become more tense and urgent than ever before. The U.S. Treasury has collected record customs revenue, a windfall for the government, yet critics argue that it's American families and companies who are ultimately footing the bill, as higher costs trickle down through the economy. Small businesses in particular are struggling to stay afloat. As the world scrambles to adapt, the ripple effects are felt everywhere, from the volatility of global stock markets to the checkout lines at local grocery stores. Investors are nervous, and families are forced to make tough choices about what they can afford. This story explores the motives behind these dramatic moves, the global reactions unfolding in real time, and the uncertain road ahead for America and its trading partners as they navigate a world transformed by tariffs. Tariffs are taxes placed on goods that are brought into a country from abroad. When a government imposes a tariff, it's essentially charging importers a fee for bringing in foreign products. This fee is usually added to the price of the imported item, making it more expensive for consumers to buy compared to similar products made domestically. The idea is that by making foreign goods costlier, people will be more likely to buy products made in their own country, which, in theory, helps local businesses grow and protects jobs at home. Tariffs can also be used as a tool to encourage consumers to support domestic industries, and sometimes to punish countries seen as trading unfairly. President Trump has argued that previous trade agreements put American workers and companies at a disadvantage. By imposing tariffs, he says the U.S. can push back against what he calls unfair practices by other countries and create a more balanced trading environment. To move quickly, the Trump administration invoked emergency powers under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, allowing them to bypass Congress and take swift action on trade policy. This was a significant move, as it gave the executive branch more direct control over how the U.S. responds to global trade challenges. The administration's strategy was to use tariffs as leverage, pressuring other countries to lower their own trade barriers and open their markets to American goods. The hope was that this tough stance would force trading partners to negotiate fairer deals. If other countries refused to cooperate, they would face matching U.S. tariffs, escalating the economic pressure and raising the stakes in global trade negotiations. Supporters of tariffs believe this approach could help revive American manufacturing, bring back lost jobs, and strengthen the economy by making U.S. industries more competitive. Another goal is to reduce the trade deficit, the gap between what the U.S. imports and exports, by encouraging more production and sales of American goods both at home and abroad. However, this confrontational approach marks a sharp break from decades of U.S. policy that favored free trade and open markets, which many believe helped fuel global economic growth and cooperation. Critics warn that such aggressive tactics could spark a prolonged trade war, leading to higher prices for consumers, uncertainty for businesses, and volatility in financial markets. The gamble is whether these bold moves will successfully reshape global trade in America's favor, giving U.S. companies a stronger position on the world stage, or whether they will backfire, triggering economic pain not just in the U.S., but around the world, as countries retaliate and global supply chains are disrupted. As the world watches and waits, the stakes in this high-risk trade showdown have never been higher. Canada and Japan, two of the United States' most important allies, have responded to recent global trade tensions with sharply contrasting strategies, each reflecting their unique economic priorities and geopolitical realities. While both countries are closely tied to the U.S. through decades of partnership, their approaches reveal how even the strongest alliances are being tested in today's rapidly changing world. Canada, under the leadership of Prime Minister Mark Carney, is taking bold steps to secure its economic future. The government is fast-tracking major expansions of ports and railways, investing billions to modernize infrastructure and open new trade corridors. This ambitious effort is designed to reduce Canada's reliance on U.S. trade, giving Canadian businesses more direct access to global markets in Europe and Asia, and aiming for long-term economic independence. If successful, this pivot could permanently alter North American trade patterns, shifting the flow of goods and capital, even if current tariffs are eventually lifted. Canadian companies are already exploring new partnerships and supply chains, signaling a lasting transformation in the region's economic landscape. Japan, on the other hand, has chosen a path of negotiation and engagement. Rather than seeking alternatives, Japanese leaders have pledged a massive $550 billion investment in the U.S. economy, focusing on technology, manufacturing, and energy. In return, Japan has secured promises of reduced tariffs and greater market access, hoping to protect its industries and maintain stability in its most critical trade relationship. Both nations have carefully avoided direct confrontation with Washington, but their actions speak volumes. Canada's push for independence and Japan's deepening investment both signal a fundamental shift in how these countries view their relationship with America, prioritizing national interests over traditional alliance expectations. Canada is diversifying its economic ties, forging new routes and agreements beyond North America. Meanwhile, Japan is doubling down on its U.S. partnership, investing heavily to safeguard its interests and ensure continued access to American markets. These responses highlight a new era of pragmatic, self-interested diplomacy, where even close allies are rethinking their strategies in a world defined by uncertainty and shifting power dynamics. The old rules of alliance are being rewritten, as nations adapt to a future where flexibility, resilience, and national advantage increasingly shape the global order. The tariffs' impact is hitting American households hard. Prices for essentials like food, clothing, and cars have jumped, with inflation reaching 2.9% in August 2025. Companies dependent on global supply chains like Synopsys Inc. are cutting jobs, 10% of their workforce lost in one blow. The Yale Budget Lab warns that nearly 900,000 more Americans, including 375,000 children, could fall into poverty by 2026. While the Treasury collects record revenue, the burden falls on consumers and vulnerable families. The policy's winners are few, the losers are many. The pain is real, immediate, and widespread. The administration's promised long-term gains remain elusive. For now, the costs are mounting. Tariffs haven't just disrupted trade, they've shaken America's oldest alliances. Canada is rethinking its economic future, investing in global trade routes to reduce U.S. dependence. Japan's massive investment deal with the U.S. is more transactional than ever, revealing a shift from shared values to hard bargaining. South Korea and Switzerland face steep tariffs too, putting billions in investments and decades of trust at risk. Allies now see Washington as unpredictable, forcing them to hedge their bets and seek new partners. The U.S. risks isolating itself, undermining the alliances that have anchored global stability for generations. Short-term economic wins may come at the cost of long-term influence. America's friendships are being tested as never before. The tariff fight has sparked a legal showdown at home. Critics argue the president's use of emergency powers to impose tariffs far exceeds the law's intent. In August 2025, a federal appeals court ruled the administration's actions illegal, setting up a Supreme Court battle. If the court upholds the ruling, the government could owe back billions in tariff refunds and face a budget crisis. Trade deals with the EU, Japan, and South Korea could unravel overnight. The fate of U.S. trade policy now rests with 9 justices. The outcome could reshape the global economy and the limits of presidential power. The stakes are enormous, and the world is watching. President Trump's tariff offensive has left the U.S. and its allies in a state of flux. The policy has raised revenue but also prices, job losses, and poverty at home. Allies are pivoting away, and trust in American leadership is eroding. The Supreme Court's upcoming decision could overturn the entire strategy, triggering chaos or relief. America faces a crossroads: double down on tariffs and risk isolation, or retreat and rebuild alliances. The outcome will define the nation's economic future and its place in the world. As of September 2025, the world waits for America's next move. The stakes for families, businesses, and global stability couldn't be higher.